In today's episode of Today in World War II, February 6th, the Finns encircle another Soviet division. Speaking of encirclement, the British completely enveloped the Italian 10th Army in North Africa. The Nazis published new guidelines to make slaughtering civilians legal in their twisted idea of legality. The Soviets make a major breakthrough in Ukraine against the Germans, and finally, MacArthur announces the complete capture of Manila. Let's get started. Okay, so on today's date, February 6, 1940, the Finnish Ninth Division completed its encirclement of the Soviet 54th Division at Kuchmo. And it's interesting that, like, I keep looking at the calendar here because we're getting closer to March. We've got 3 weeks left in March until March. That's pretty much when the war is going to end because the Soviets are going to make a major breakthrough in the Karelian Peninsula, which was the main theater of warfare in the Winter War. There were other theaters in East Karelia, on the other side of Lake Ladoga. There was also a war, battles going on. In this case, the Finns had completely encircled the Soviet 54th Division. It was kind of a secondary front, so the war was not going to be won or lost on this front. However, the Finns still had the upper hand in this part of the war, and they were using their tried and true method to defeat the Soviets, which was stop them, stop the advance at the front, take out the rear, and then use their ski troops to flank the Soviets and chop the division up into bite-sized morsels, you know, establish snipers around those pockets. The Finns called it a mutti, and go after the field kitchens, go after the bonfires, do whatever it could, do whatever they could to let the Finnish climate, the cold, the freezing temperatures work in their favor by having the Soviets freeze to death. And I tell you what, smart. They were a smart country. Unfortunately, smart only gets you so far. And as we'll see in the history here next few weeks, it can't stand up against unlimited manpower and massed artillery. Uh, you can't. I mean, Finland probably could stand up to the YouTube algorithm, but why do it when it's so easy to resist? And all you have to do to help me do that is to subscribe to my channel, click on the bell that will notify you whenever I drop a new video, and you'll be helping me grow my channel, which helps the algorithm show my content to more people. Thank you. On February 6, 1941, we are still following the Keystone Cops retreat that the Italians are in the midst of doing. Their main defense in this part of Operation Compass, where the Brits were saying, we had enough of you. So the Italian 10th Army right now is fleeing. Well, they thought faster than the Brits could pursue them. However, the Brits in the last couple of days were able to get their armor, uh, to do an envelopment to flank them. And it took about 130 miles, but the British 7th Armored, and along with the Australian 6th Division, were able to capture a town in Libya called, and I'm gonna, forgive me for mispronouncing this, Saledima, and this was able to further encircle the Italian 10th Army. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert here. Operation Compass, this particular part of Operation Compass, the British and the Australians, the Commonwealth troops, they take a ton of prisoners. So just, a lot more future agricultural workers going to Canada to pick vegetables for the Canadians. That's where they'll probably end up. Majority of them end up being there. Um, I don't want you to have to go to some other country and be forced to pick agricultural products. You don't have to. The way to get around that is to like this video, leave a comment. And that way you can say, hey, I did my bit for you. I've helped you grow your channel. And I'll say, okay, fine. I won't take extraordinary measures to make you a seasonal agricultural worker, and you'll be fine. So please do that for me. I would appreciate it. On February 6, 1941, Urban Rommel was unexpectedly summoned from leave. He was having he was a homebody. He liked to spend time with his wife and his son. And unexpectedly for him, he was instructed to head immediately to the Fuhrer because he was going to get command of the Africa Corps. Now, I talked about this a couple videos ago where he was given command, but this was where Hitler himself said, go forth, go to Libya and kick some British ass, which he did. Unfortunately, not enough to win the entire thing. On February 6, 1942, the Germans, the Nazis, they published new guidelines for the conduct of anti-guerrilla warfare. First of all, because of Heinrich Himmler, noted humanitarian and lover of peace throughout the war, uh, he insisted that the word partisan or the word guerrilla not be used at all. In the war, they would be referred to as bandits. Okay, so that meant that this gave them the legitimate, in their view, the legitimate right to fight any resistance at all from the occupied countries, regardless of conventional legality or morality, without limitations, even against women and children. Okay, so there you go. It's amazing how the Germans tried, they documented their atrocities. They tried to somehow justify their atrocities. When all said and done, the ones that weren't able to escape to South America either died, went to prison, or ended up on at the wrong end of a noose, right? On February 6, 1943, the Germans arrested about 600 Dutch students from all over the country because a Nazi officer was shot, and he claimed before he died that he had been shot by Dutch students. So, knowing that the Germans were famous for their patience and for their ability to wait and see what happens, they immediately rounded up 600 innocent students and sent them to concentration camps. So, there you go, just talking more and more about, the way the Nazis ran their occupation, and just one more example of the atrocities. In February 6, 1944, the Soviets made a major breakthrough in Ukraine, and they reached the Dnieper River near Nikopol. Sorry for the bad pronunciation there. I should know that. Uh, this was the Southern Pincer attack. This attack through Ukraine is going to end up going through the Balkans, Romania, Bulgaria, and swing up, towards Berlin. But this is still early days of 44. There are ways from that happening yet, although the clock is definitely ticking. This is important because if you know anything about geography in Ukraine, the Dnieper River is the last major barrier for an advancing army coming from the east before you get to the Carpathian Mountains. But that's Poland, that's Czechoslovakia, those areas, the mountainous areas. But in this part of the world, it's all steppe, it's all prairie, and for them to get there, all they had to do was then break through, do a river crossing, which of course they will do. They were very good at that in the war, and that would get them free them up to continue their offensive against the Germans, who were definitely on their heels and would never be off their heels until the end of the war. Finally, on February 6th, 1945, Douglas MacArthur, General MacArthur, announced that his forces had captured the city of Manila. I suspect that there was still fighting going on when he made this announcement. The same thing happened in Korea when the UN forces liberated Seoul after the invasion of Incheon. It's kind of funny because when he's making a speech about how Seoul had been liberated, you could still hear artillery fire and fighting going on, in Seoul proper. So MacArthur had a tendency to be a little bit premature in his announcements, but nevertheless, the city, the Manila, regardless if it was today or a few days later, it was definitely captured, and he announced the liberation of 5,000 prisoners of war. The previous day, he announced that the liberation of American civilians who had been interned in Manila for the duration of the war. So that was a happy day in Manila. If you don't take in consideration the almost total destruction of Manila from the Japanese, who fanatically fought to the last man and were making sure they destroyed as much as they could and killed as many citizens as they could, because that was their move in World War II. My move right now is to say thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I will see you tomorrow.